Just about anything in terms of human rights or civil rights that have been attained in this country over the history of this country has been attained through direct action. By that I mean direct physical action, sit-ins, demonstrations, marches, in some cases events that turned out to have an awful lot of unpremeditated violence associated with it. Which nobody wants to recommend, of course, but it is inevitable when rights are denied to people. Look what's happening in Cuba now. When rights are denied to people, human rights, civil rights, economic rights, educational rights, whatever those rights are, eventually the people reach a point where they say, okay, enough of this shit. And there is a reaction. We have reached that point. I shouldn't say we. The Democrats in the legislature in Texas finally reached that point. For the second time. The Democrats in Texas understand that the Republicans in the legislature and the sitting governor, no pun intended, the sitting governor and the Republicans in the Texas legislature are a bunch of Christian fascists and are pushing this Christian fascist agenda, no matter what the Democrats try to do, where it concerns using the legislative process in the proper manner, where it concerns debating with the Republican colleagues the idiocy and the asininity and the unfairness of what the Christian fascists are trying to do. None of that worked. And the Democrats have been trying, honestly, openly, deliberately, up front, trying to convince enough of their counterparts in the so-called Republican Party, which is really Christian fascists, that what the Christian fascists are doing in Texas is immoral, should be considered illegal, unfair, rotten, dirty, racist, scoundrel activity, all of that. And the Christian fascists refused to listen. So the first time the Democrats did this, they just didn't show up for a vote on what the sitting governor and the Christian fascists are trying to do in that state. And that is deny people of color, young people, old people, people physically challenged with the right to vote, for the right to vote. So the Democrats walked out, which denied the legislature a quorum, and no business could be conducted. What is a quorum there? 3/5, 2/3? I'm not sure of the number of people elected or constitutionally determined in the state of Texas. So the Democrats walked out, and the legislative session ended, and the filthy bill that the Christian fascists in Texas were trying to get passed died. And the governor, of course, made it very clear that he, being the Christian fascist punk that he is, he was going to call a special session so that this singular issue could be addressed, which he did. So once again, we had the picture of the Democrats trying to convince the Christian fascists in the legislature not to do this for all the obvious reasons, not to pass a bill that takes away the fundamental reason for living in a democratic republic, in a country that claims self-governance, and that is the right to vote, the right to select one's leadership. But the Christian fascists would have none of that. So the Democrats left again, and this time the sitting governor decided that he was going to have them all arrested, which under the Texas legislature, he has the power to do. They are elected to represent the people. And if they do not represent the people, if they don't show up, then they're breaking the law in Texas and can be arrested. I don't know what happens when they're arrested. What are they charged with? I don't know. Are they hauled into the legislature? I don't know. Can they be forced to vote? Of course not. But their presence would give the Christian fascists the quorum that they need. So this time, the Democrats decided to go beyond the reach of the Christian fascists and the sitting governor and leave the state, which they did. They chartered 2 commercial airliners and went to Washington, D.C. And this morning, Tuesday morning, they had a press conference. I think they had one yesterday, too, where they made very clear why they were in Washington. They will not be intimidated by the Christian fascists in the legislature in Texas, nor by the sitting governor. And by the way, the sitting governor had the nerve to say on the Fox sewer the other night that the Democrats had left Texas because, according to Governor Abbott, they're afraid of a fight, which is not like people in Texas, right, Greg? Huh? I mean, can you believe this shit? That was the statement he made. They're afraid to stand and fight. Fight what, you slimy bastard, you? Fight what? Against the idiocy and the Christian fascism and the incipient political fascism that you and the Christian fascists are introducing into Texas. How do you fight that, short of picking up weapons? How do you fight it, Greg? So they left, the Democrats. And part of the reason they left was to try to prevail, and this is useless, try to prevail upon the Democrats from Texas who are in the legislative branch of government in D.C., to try to prevail on them, to convince their half-assed brothers and sisters back in Texas to cut the shit, to stop this. Now, that's not going to work. Because this entire scam, this voting scam, oh, well, all we're trying to do is eliminate fraud and deceit and deception and cheating. Bullshit. What you are doing is filleting Donald Trump forever. Don't you people's jaws ever get tired? Don't you ever get to a point where you say, why are we doing this for this orange bastard who couldn't care less about us? I don't understand this. I will never understand it, except to see it in the light that these people have sold out into a cult of destruction, violence, sickness, and Trump's psychopathological problems. My God, this is just so incredibly bizarre and sicko, right? So, using a tactic that people have used in this country so many times in order to make a political point, the Democrats demonstrated with their feet and said, screw this, and walked out. It's about goddamn time. Now, if the Democrats across the country, and I'm not talking just about elected officials, but all Democrats, progressives, liberals, would just stand up and slap the shit, either literally or figuratively, your choice, slap the shit out of these Christian fascists, probably more politically than literally, and let them know, look, you asswipes have had your fun. It's over. You're not going to turn this country into a fascist theocracy. It's not going to happen. And how do we do that? By more of this sort of action. And it has to come at the present time, at the current time, I should say, from elected officials in the Democratic Party. Eventually, it's going to require all of us. I've been talking about this for 10 years? To get 10 million people into the street, 20 million, whatever it takes. I realize pandemic and all this other horse crap. But until we can put enough people in the street, again, let me use Cuba, look at Belarus, look at Ukraine, look at any country where a dictatorial son of a bitch has tried to impose some type of authoritarian government that denies people basic human rights up to and including essential rights like enough food to eat or enough clean water to drink. So eventually the people of the United States are going to have to do this. It's just a given. It's a given because of what has happened. in the age of this orange vomitous bastard Donald Trump. And I can't help it. I don't want to dwell on this, but I keep thinking back, yes, I do, to the 2015 political campaign for the presidency, the debates, where Hillary Clinton, I don't give a shit if you like her or not, where Hillary Clinton just eviscerated this punk. Cut off his manhood and stuffed it in his mouth over and over again. And it was very clear Hillary Clinton may not have been the type of person that was very likable, but is Trump? And I can remember on the program all those years ago, 6 years ago, oh boy, do I remember, screeching and screaming and yelling and frothing at the mouth about there was no choice here. It wasn't a choice between a Democrat and a Republican, between a filthy, vile scumsucker like Donald Trump and a politically astute woman who maybe you didn't like her. I certainly didn't have any fond feelings for Hillary Clinton, but the choice was between chaos, insanity, destruction, and some kind of political order. And I've said this before. In 2015, when I was doing more of a talk show than a podcast, and I had an active chat room that paralleled the program I was doing, and I watched the people in that chat room go from being liberals or progressives into insane son of a bitches who absolutely refused, no matter the cost, to understand the necessity of voting your heart in a primary and your brain in a general election. And I watched them peel off from Hillary Clinton. Well, I'm not going to vote. Fuck her. Excuse me. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. She'll have us in a war with Russia within 60 days. And all this other crap. Well, for all the people across the country, including the people that clustered in that chat room, who made that decision, you are responsible for this. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.